The Internet, as we know it today, was not born in a garage, nor was it designed by visionaries dreaming of a connected world. It emerged from a military imperative funded by the United States Department of Defense during one of the most dangerous periods in modern history. What began as a tool for survival in the face of nuclear annihilation eventually became the foundation of global communication. To understand why the Internet was a military project, we must return to the Cold War and the strategic fears that shaped it. In the decades following World War II, the United States and the Soviet Union entered a prolonged confrontation marked by ideological division, nuclear arms escalation, and the constant threat of total war. By the late 1950s, both superpowers possessed thermonuclear weapons capable of devastating entire cities within minutes. Military planners on both sides understood that any future conflict might involve the destruction of critical infrastructure, including centralized communication systems. Traditional telephone networks, which relied on circuit switching and centralized exchanges, were vulnerable. If a single switching station was destroyed, entire regions could be cut off from communication. For the United States military, this posed an unacceptable risk. Command and control structures depended on the ability to send orders, receive intelligence, and coordinate forces across vast distances. A decapitation strike against communication hubs could paralyze the entire defense apparatus. The question became urgent: how could a communication network survive a nuclear attack? The answer would come from the Advanced Research Projects Agency, known as ARPA, established in 1958 within the Department of Defense. ARPA was created in response to the Soviet Union's launch of Sputnik, the first artificial satellite, which shocked American leadership and exposed perceived gaps in technological development. The agency's mission was to fund high-risk, high-reward research that could maintain American superiority in science and technology. Unlike traditional military research, ARPA operated with considerable independence, allowing scientists and engineers to explore unconventional ideas. Among these ideas was the concept of a resilient, distributed communication network that could function even if parts of it were destroyed. At the time, existing communication systems were built on the principle of circuit switching, the same technology used in telephone networks. When a call was made, a dedicated circuit was established between 2 points for the duration of the conversation. This was efficient for voice communication, but it had a critical flaw. If any link in that circuit was severed, the connection was lost entirely. Researchers began exploring an alternative method called packet switching, a technique in which data would be broken into small packets, each independently routed through the network. If one route was destroyed, packets could simply take another path and reassemble at their destination. This decentralized approach eliminated the need for a central control point, making the network inherently more resilient. In 1969, ARPA funded the construction of the first operational packet switch network, known as ARPANET. The initial system connected 4 research institutions: the University of California, Los Angeles, Stanford Research Institute, the University of California, Santa Barbara, and the University of Utah. These universities were chosen not only for their technical expertise, but also because they were already conducting defense-related research. The first message sent over ARPANET was transmitted on October 29, 1969, from UCLA to Stanford. The message was intended to be the word login, but the system crashed after only the first 2 letters. Nevertheless, the experiment proved that packet switching worked in practice, not just in theory. ARPANET grew steadily throughout the early 1970s, adding nodes across the United States and eventually extending to research institutions in Europe. Though the network was funded and overseen by the Department of Defense, many of the nodes were located at universities. Researchers at these institutions were granted access to the network for academic collaboration, exchanging data, and sharing computational resources. This dual nature, military funding combined with academic openness, proved to be a defining characteristic of ARPANET's early development. While the military sought a robust communication tool, the academic community used it to advance scientific research. In doing so, they began to develop a culture of collaboration that would later become central to the Internet as we know it. By the late 1970s, it became clear that ARPANET needed a more flexible and scalable architecture. Different networks using different protocols were emerging around the world, and there was no standard way for them to communicate with one another. In 1974, researchers Vint Cerf and Bob Kahn published a paper outlining a new protocol called Transmission Control Protocol, later refined into the TCP/IP suite. This protocol suite became the standard for ARPANET in 1983, and it allowed different networks to interconnect seamlessly. It was this transition that truly transformed ARPANET from a single experimental network into the backbone of what would become the Internet. Throughout the 1980s, ARPANET's military origins began to fade into the background as its civilian and academic applications expanded. The Department of Defense eventually separated its operational military communications onto a distinct network called MILNet, while ARPANET continued to serve researchers and universities. By the late 1980s, the National Science Foundation had established its own network, NSFNet, which became the primary backbone for academic Internet traffic in the United States. ARPANET itself was decommissioned in 1990, having fulfilled its original purpose and given birth to something far larger. What emerged from this process was a global network built on principles designed for military survival, decentralization, redundancy, and resilience. These same principles made the network adaptable, scalable, and open to innovation. The Internet became a tool not for war, but for commerce, culture, communication, and knowledge. It is a remarkable transformation. A system designed to withstand nuclear strikes became the platform for email, the World Wide Web, social connection, and nearly every form of digital interaction we now consider essential. The story of the Internet's military origins reminds us that many transformative technologies do not begin with the intentions we associate with them today. Radar, GPS, jet engines, and even the foundations of modern computing all emerged from military research driven by strategic necessity. In this sense, the Internet is not an exception, but a continuation of a broader historical pattern. The tools of war, when released into the wider world, often take on lives of their own, shaped by the creativity and collaboration of those who use them. If you found this exploration of technological history valuable, there are many more stories like this waiting to be told. Tech Lore Explained continues to examine the origins, evolution, and impact of the systems that shape our world.